The first sword ever aimed at my throat stopped so close that its polished edge reflected my pulse. It never touched me. A clean inch of air remained between the steel and my skin, and no matter how hard Grant pushed, that inch refused to become smaller. 300 students watched from the stone seats around the academy dueling ring. Most of them had arrived expecting to see the weakest student in the first year get expelled. Instead, they watched Grant's boots grind white lines into the sand, while his sword hung motionless beneath my jaw. I adjusted the silver piping on my collar. Grant's face reddened. "What did you do? You challenged me," I said. "I stood here. We've both contributed." Laughter tried to rise from the seats, but it came out thin and uncertain. Grant was the highest-ranked swordsman in our year. Lightning had chosen him during the entrance ceremony. His aura score had cracked a crystal pillar. Mine had failed to move the examiner's needle at all. That was why Headmaster Damon had placed my expulsion notice on the table that morning. One more last-place result, and I would be carrying my trunk down the mountain before sunset. I had spent a year pretending my ability was too small to measure because explaining the truth sounded worse. My power controlled 1 inch. That did not impress people who could split boulders or summon fire. They never asked what happened inside that inch. Grant jerked his sword back and slashed at my ribs. The blade stopped beside my coat. He changed direction, cutting for my shoulder, knee, wrist and temple. Every strike froze at the same invisible border. Steel surrounded me in flashing fragments, always moving until the final inch, always becoming perfectly still. My ability was simple. Anything I sincerely considered hostile could not come closer than 1 inch, unless I permitted it. Grant leaped away. His confidence had not broken yet, it had only become louder. Blue current spilled along his sword and crawled over his arm. "A cheap barrier," he announced for the crowd. "Barriers break." He drove forward with the attack that had won him 6 duels in under a minute. Lightning wrapped around his body, and the point of his sword became a blue star. The ring wards groaned. Students in the front row threw up their hands as sand blasted over them. I kept both hands in my pockets. The sword stopped 1 inch from the center of my chest. The lightning did not. It reached the same border, divided into a dozen bright streams, and curved around my body. Blue fire traced my outline without touching a single thread. It struck the sand behind me and turned half the ring to smoking glass. Grant remained at the center of the blast, both hands locked around his hilt. I could see my own calm expression reflected in his wide eyes. "Your barrier should have shattered," he whispered, "then hit it again." He did. Grant emptied every technique he knew into the next 30 seconds. His sword came from above like an execution blade, from below in a silver crescent, then from 6 directions as his lightning made false images of the weapon. Every edge stopped, every spark bent away. I did not step aside because there was nowhere safer to stand than exactly where he was trying to kill me. The false blades vanished first. Grant's real sword remained trapped near my cheek. He pulled with both arms. It would not retreat because his attack had not ended. His intent was still driving it toward me. I leaned close enough for only him to hear. "Do you know why everyone thinks I'm weak?" His jaw tightened. "Because the testing crystal had to touch my hand." I took my right hand from my pocket and tapped the pommel of his sword with one finger. For that instant, I permitted the weapon to enter my distance, not toward me, but away. All the force Grant had poured into the attack found a direction. The sword snapped backward, its pommel struck his chest, lifted him off his feet, and threw him across the ring. He bounced once on the glassed sand, crossed the boundary rope, and stopped against the lowest stone bench. Silence spread outward from the ring. The judge stared at me, then at Grant, then down at the little victory flag in his hand, as if it had become a difficult magical artifact. Nora sat beside him with an archivist's black notebook balanced on one knee. She had short copper hair, a pair of bronze striking rings at her belt, and the uncomfortable habit of recording facts while everyone else was still deciding what they had seen. She drew one careful line through the prediction beside my name. The judge finally raised the flag. "Winner, Evan." The silence broke hard. Students stood. Some shouted that Grant had slipped. Others crowded the railing to inspect the scorched ring. The same classmates who had ignored me all year began repeating my name as if they had discovered it. Grant pushed himself upright. The front of his uniform had split where his own weapon struck him. He cheated. With what? Nora asked. He pointed at me and failed to answer. Headmaster Damon descended from the high viewing platform. He was a broad man with iron-gray hair and the permanent expression of someone whose buildings were always one explosion away from becoming ruins. He walked across the glass until he stood before me. "Your aura remains unreadable," he said. "That sounds like an equipment problem." One corner of his mouth moved. "Your expulsion is cancelled." That pleased the crowd less than the possibility of another fight, but it pleased me. My room was small, yet the mattress had finally stopped trying to stab me with loose springs. Damon continued, "You will enter the Crucible trials tomorrow." My satisfaction vanished. The Crucible was reserved for the Academy's elite combat class. It occupied a valley filled with enchanted weapons, elemental hazards, and creatures built to test whether talented students screamed impressively before being rescued. "I'd prefer the expulsion review," I said. "The winner of a ranking challenge cannot refuse advancement." That rule has never been mentioned. No last-ranked student has defeated the top rank before. Nora closed her notebook. "I'll observe him." I looked at her. "Did I do something to offend you?" "Not yet. I dislike unexplained results." Grant staggered back into the ring, furious enough to ignore the judge trying to stop him. Lightning snapped from his shoulders. "Give me another round." I turned toward him. His next step ended with his face 1 inch from mine. He had meant to grab my coat. His open hand trembled in the narrow space between us, unable to close around the fabric. The crowd saw it clearly this time. I lowered my voice. "You've already given me the better result." His anger flickered into something much more useful: hesitation. Damon ordered the ring cleared. As the other students descended to surround Grant, the headmaster led Nora and me beneath the arena. We passed practice vaults and storage chambers until the cheering above became a dull vibration in the ceiling. At the end of the corridor waited a circular door of black stone. Silver lines formed the image of 2 hands almost touching, separated by a narrow gap. Damon pressed his palm to the center. The door opened without a sound. Inside, a single iron band floated over a pedestal. It was plain except for a white mark no wider than my finger. "The warden's band," Damon said. "It guarded this academy before there was an academy." Nora moved around the pedestal without crossing the red line painted on the floor. "Every headmaster has attempted compatibility. It rejects all of them. Why show it to me?" "Because it reacted during your duel." The band turned in the air. Its white mark faced me. I stepped closer. Nora reached for my sleeve, perhaps to stop me, but her hand paused. I did not consider her hostile, so my power offered no resistance. She noticed that too, and withdrew on her own. The band flew from the pedestal. Damon raised a protective ward. Nora brought both bronze rings into her hands. I remained still as the relic crossed the chamber and stopped 1 inch before my wrist. Words appeared in white fire above it. "Last measure recognized." The black stone beneath us answered with a slow, enormous knock. Damon's face lost all humor. A voice rose through the floor. It sounded distant enough to belong beneath a mountain and close enough to breathe against my ear. "At last," it said, "a door with a man for a lock." The warden's band circled my wrist, still separated from my skin. "Who was that?" I asked. Damon stared at the floor. "Victor. The reason this academy was built." The next morning, I entered the Crucible Valley wearing the band over my sleeve. The academy had already transformed yesterday's duel into 12 contradictory rumors. According to the students gathered on the cliffs, I had frozen time, stolen Grant's lightning, replaced myself with an illusion, or bribed the judge with money I definitely did not possess. Grant stood among the elite class with his chest wrapped beneath a fresh uniform. He had refused to miss the trial. The bruise from his sword pommel had done nothing for his temper. Nora waited at the valley gate, notebook replaced by her bronze striking rings. "I'm joining the observation team." Observation usually happens from somewhere arrows cannot reach. "Then provide one." The gate rose. Beyond it stretched a mile of broken terrain. Mechanical bows lined the cliffs. Fire vents glowed between black stones. Storm pillars turned the sky purple over a distant bronze tower. The trial prize shone at the top. A crystal key said to open the academy's best private training room. I wanted that room. More importantly, it contained a bed twice the width of mine. Damon's voice rolled from the viewing platform. "Reach the tower. Retrieve the key. The crucible will increase pressure according to your progress." Nora looked at me. "Ready?" I started walking. The first bow fired before my second step. An arrow raced for my left eye and stopped an inch from it. Another halted beside my throat. Then the entire cliff released. Hundreds of dark shafts poured across the valley, their iron heads flashing as they converged on me. "No momo mam piduan enion." I walked through them. Each arrow stopped at my boundary and remained suspended because the enchantment continued driving it forward. They gathered around my shoulders, ribs, legs, and face without touching me. More struck the motionless shafts and bent outward. A tunnel of steel formed behind my steps. The elite students on the cliff stopped cheering. Nora followed close enough to use the path I created. One arrow approached her from the side. I considered it hostile to someone under my protection. It stopped beside her ear. She glanced at the hovering arrow, then at me. "You can extend it to selected people. Distance, 1 inch. Cost. You ask questions during dangerous moments. That is where answers become accurate." The arrow's storm thickened until sunlight vanished above us. I extended my hand. The warden's band hovered over my sleeve, and its white mark brightened. I permitted the arrows directly ahead of me to move away. They did not fall. They shot backward in a widening wave, severed bowstrings along both cliffs, and buried themselves around the stunned observers, without touching anyone. A few students dropped flat after the danger had already passed. Grant remained standing. His expression suggested he hated being impressed even more than he hated losing. The fire vents opened next. Red columns erupted under our feet. Nora sprang onto a black stone, but the entire path became a furnace. Flame rushed against my boots and split. It curved up both sides of my body in bright walls, joined above my head, and streamed behind me like a burning cloak. I kept walking. Nora landed beside me inside the narrow calm. Her copper hair lifted in the heat, but not one spark crossed the space I had accepted around her. "The fire has no intent," she said. "The trial does." That was the first rule most people misunderstood. My power did not judge whether a sword was evil. It recognized harm directed toward me. A falling raindrop could touch my face. A harmless practice blade could rest in my hand. The moment someone tried to injure me with either, the final inch belonged to me. Lightning descended from the storm pillars, it split over my head, 2 white branches curled around my shoulders and struck the valley on opposite sides, then came another, and another. Fire spiraled at my feet, while lightning traced a bright cage around me. From the cliff, I must have looked like the center of a storm that had forgotten how to strike its target. The tower doors opened, a stone beast charged out on 6 legs. It was larger than a carriage, armored in bronze plates, with one black horn aimed at my chest. Every step shattered the trial path. The audience found its voice again because this was the Crucible's champion, an artifact that had ended last year's trial by putting 3 elite students in the infirmary. Nora raised her rings. "Stay here," I said. "I'm not decorative, then observe something useful." I left the shelter around her and walked forward alone. The stone beast lowered its head, the black horn gathered fire from every vent and lightning from every pillar. Grant shouted something from the cliff, but the roar swallowed his warning. The beast struck. Its horn stopped 1 inch from my chest. The ground beneath my shoes split, the bronze tower shook. Fire and lightning burst around my body, carving a circular trench 20 feet deep. At its center, I stood on one untouched pillar of stone, while the beast drove all 6 legs against the earth. I rested my palm on the air in front of its horn. "You're making this bed very expensive." The beast strained harder, cracks spread through its armored head. I permitted one finger to cross my distance. My fingertip touched the horn. The force trapped at the boundary returned through that single point. The black horn shattered. A line of cracks raced down the beast's head, across its bronze spine, and through all 6 legs. For half a second it remained frozen in the shape of its charge. Then it collapsed into a neat mountain of stone, around my untouched pillar. The storm pillars went dark. Nora looked down into the trench. "You were worried about the training room. It has a very good bed." Above us, the crystal key detached from the tower and flew into my waiting hand. The entire valley rang with a tone I felt in the warden's band. White letters appeared across the sky. "Prison compatibility confirmed." The celebration on the cliff died before it began. Damon appeared at the broken edge of the trench. "The Crucible was not only a trial," he said, "it was built to find a successor." The ruined stone beneath my feet pulsed. Victor's voice traveled through every crack in the valley. "You guard 1 inch, Evan. I have spent 3 centuries learning to consume every mile beyond it." A black line opened under the shattered beast. For the first time, something pushed against my boundary without a blade, flame, or visible body. The pressure felt like a hand closing around the idea of where I stood. It still stopped 1 inch away. I looked into the darkness. Victor laughed. "Good, I would have hated to wait this long for a weak lock." The line closed, leaving the valley silent and cold. By sunset, the academy had moved me into the elite residence. My new room had polished windows, a private bath, and the promised bed. Students gathered outside the door, pretending they had reasons to walk past. Grant stood at the end of the corridor, watched me inspect the mattress, and finally spoke. "I'm going to beat you. Try after breakfast." Nora leaned against the doorframe with her notebook open again. Victor spoke your name without being told. I sat on the edge of the bed. The warden's band floated above my wrist, its white mark aimed at the floor. Far beneath us, something knocked once against the prison. Then every lamp in the academy went out. The darkness lasted 1 breath. On the second, every window in my new room turned red. I crossed to the glass. Above the academy, the night sky had filled with burning points. They were too large and too slow to be stars. Each one dragged a black tail toward the mountain. The first impact struck the western ward. The residents jumped beneath my feet. Windows burst inward all along the corridor, but the shards aimed at me stopped in a glittering wall. I pushed them away with the back of my hand and stepped outside. Students flooded from their rooms. Some carried weapons, others carried blankets, shoes, or nothing useful at all. Grant emerged fully dressed with his sword already bright with lightning. He looked at the red sky, then at me. "Did your prisoner do this? He seems unhappy with the accommodations." Nora came up the stairs 2 at a time. "The lower seal is opening." Damon ordered everyone to the dining hall. Its foundation is part of the original prison. Another burning mass struck the wards. Purple light spread over the academy's towers like cracks across glass. We moved with the crowd. I could have reached the dining hall faster, but panic had turned the staircases dangerous. Students shoved at every landing. A hanging lamp tore loose above a younger boy. I widened my attention for a moment, caught the iron frame 1 inch above his hair, and set it against the wall. Nora noticed the effort in my breathing. "Scale has a cost." "Attention," I said. "The inch is absolute." "I'm not." That answer satisfied her enough to stop asking questions while the ceiling moved. The dining hall stood at the academy's center beneath a blue dome. Damon waited at its doors, sending students inside. Blood darkened one sleeve, and the protective stone on his staff had cracked. "Victor's creatures are in the lower passages," he said. "They consume the space between themselves and whatever they hunt. Our wards cannot keep them at a distance." Grant lifted his sword. "Then I'll fight them close." The floor broke before Damon could object. A black limb punched through the tiles. It stretched twice the length of a man's arm, and ended in a mouth of pale teeth. More limbs followed, dragging a flat shadow creature into the hall. Its body folded each time it moved. One instant it was 20 feet away. The next, the space between us crumpled and its jaws opened beside Grant's face. His sword met its teeth. Lightning burst through the hall. Grant drove it backward, but two more shapes climbed through the floor. "Inside!" Damon shouted. Students ran past us. Nora's bronze rings expanded around her fists, and she struck a creature hard enough to fold its head into the wall. She was not a healer waiting to be protected. She hit like a bell dropped from a tower. Grant cut the first creature in half. Both halves collapsed the distance to him. I stepped between them. The snapping mouths stopped beside my cheeks. Their bodies continued pulling forward, becoming two dark ribbons, stretched around an inch they could not consume. Grant's lightning faded. They crossed 30 feet instantly. They missed the important part. I permitted both creatures to move away. They shot through the broken floor, and struck the prison passages below with a sound like two doors slamming. The last students entered the dining hall. Damon sealed the doors. Blue lines ignited through the walls as the room became an island of light inside the shaking academy. For several minutes, the attacks came from below. Teeth rose through tiles, claws unfolded from shadows. Grant, Nora and Damon met them while I moved among the tables, stopping anything that slipped past. The battle was loud enough to hide a different problem. The red light outside kept growing. I looked through a high window. The largest burning star had crossed the outer ward. It was not a meteor, it was a massive prison stone Victor had torn from beneath the mountain and thrown into the sky. It descended toward the dining hall trailing black fire. "Everyone down," Damon ordered. I sat at the nearest table. Grant stared at me. "Did you hear him?" "Yes." A final shadow creature spread across the window. Its claws punched through the glass and stopped 1 inch from my face. I held its attention there, reached for the bowl someone had abandoned, and ate one last spoonful of soup. Room became quiet enough for the creature's teeth to click. Nora slowly lowered her rings. "You waited until everyone was watching." The soup was getting cold. The stone meteor struck. I widened personal distance over the dining hall. The impact erased the blue dome and flattened every building around us. Black fire rolled across the academy. Stone fragments filled the air. Inside my attention, the dining hall remained untouched. Dust stopped 1 inch beyond the walls. Broken beams hovered above the roof. The shadow creature at the window compressed against my boundary until it burst into smoke. Pressure drove through my skull. Protecting one body was instinct. Protecting hundreds of moving people meant recognizing every threat at once. I gripped the edge of the table while the storm tried to give me more enemies than I could count. Nora saw my fingers whiten. "How long?" "Long enough." I stood and walked toward the ruined doors. Outside, the academy had become a crater. Towers leaned over the courtyards. Fire crossed the gardens in red rivers. Lightning descended through the broken ward and struck at random. Above it all, the largest bell tower fell toward the students sheltering behind me. Grant ran for the courtyard, but even his lightning could not reach them in time. I raised one hand. The tower stopped 1 inch above the stones. Every brick, beam and bronze bell hung over the kneeling students. I lowered my palm. The wreckage descended with it until the tower settled harmlessly across the courtyard. Grant stopped beside me. For once he had no challenge ready. The mountain split open. A pillar of black light climbed from beneath the academy and punched a hole through the clouds. Within it stood the shape of a tall man wrapped in strips of moving darkness. Victor had no clear face, only two white eyes and a mouth that appeared whenever he spoke. "You can guard a room," he said. "Can you guard a world?" The black pillar bent east toward the horizon. Damon went pale. "The Meridian Gate," he explained it in one sentence because there was no time for more. The gate separated our world from the outer realm where Victor had learned to consume distance. If he opened it, places, bodies, and hostile forces would collapse together until nothing remained safely apart. Victor's shape dissolved into the pillar and vanished east. The lower prison seal broke behind him. An army of shadow creatures began climbing from the mountain. Grant raised his damaged sword. Students gathered behind him, many shaking, none running now. "Go," he told me. "We can hold these." Yesterday, he had tried to put a sword through my throat. Tonight, he stood between an army and the people who had cheered for him. I decided I preferred him like this. Nora joined my side. "You stay," I said. "The route to the Meridian Gate crosses the long canyon. Victor kept his strongest servants there. That sounds like a reason to stay." She spun one bronze ring over her knuckles. "You protect distance. I remove obstacles." Grant planted his sword in the broken courtyard. "Take her, she'll write down the parts you exaggerate." Damon pressed the crystal key from the crucible into the warden's band. It dissolved into white light. A map burned across my sleeve, tracing an eastern path. "Victor knows the old warden's limits," he said. "Do not fight like the old warden." I stepped over the edge of the crater. "I've never met him." "Her? Then I'm already doing well." Nora made a sound that might have been a laugh, and followed me into the night. We reached Long Canyon before dawn. The path cut between red cliffs, too narrow to avoid an army, and too exposed to survive one. Victor's forces filled both ridges. Thousands of archers stood in black armor, with bows already drawn. Fire serpents curled among them, and giant swords hung point down in the sky. At the far end, the Meridian Gate rose like two white cliffs facing each other. A wound of darkness had opened in the gap. Victor floated before it, building himself a body from the stone, and lightning he pulled across the horizon. Nora counted the archers. "There are more than 3,000. Then they'll run out of arrows together." I entered the canyon. The first volley darkened the dawn. Arrows fell from both ridges in a storm so dense that the canyon vanished. They struck my boundary and stopped. Shafts gathered over my head, against my shoulders, before my eyes. I kept walking, and the iron storm moved with me, until tens of thousands of arrows filled the air behind my coat. Nora stayed within my moving shelter. Her rings shattered any shadow creature that rose beneath our feet. The archers fired again. The second storm joined the first. Sunlight disappeared behind suspended iron. The cliffs trembled beneath the weight of bowstrings. I never changed pace. Ahead, a giant blade fell. Its point stopped above my hair. I walked beneath it, carrying the sword forward on my boundary, until its hilt struck a stone bridge, and tore the enemy formation apart. Fire serpents descended next. Their burning jaws opened around us, then split into bright streams, and curved along the canyon walls. Lightning spears followed. White bolts bent around my body, tangled with the fire, and formed a blazing tunnel through the army. The archers lowered their bows. Behind me hung an iron sky made from every arrow they had fired. Nora looked back once. No one will believe the count. Use a smaller number. Make it believable. A figure dropped into our path. It was Victor's champion, a broad creature covered in overlapping gray plates. A circular mouth opened in its chest. The canyon shortened around it. Cliffs folded inward. The suspended arrows behind us snapped together as every yard between the champion and its prey vanished. Nora's shoulder touched mine though she had been several steps away. The champion reached. Its plated hand stopped 1 inch from my face. The creature pulled harder. The entire canyon compressed until both armies, both cliffs, and the Meridian Gate seemed stacked within arm's reach. My final inch remained clear. Victor watched from the gate. Space is gone, his champion said through the mouth in its chest. Not mine. I bent, picked up a pebble, and held it between finger and thumb. The champion opened its chest wider, preparing to swallow the last distance by force. I permitted the pebble to cross. My finger flicked. The stone passed through the circular mouth, punched out between the creature's shoulder blades, and continued across the compressed canyon. A round hole appeared in the far cliff. The champion stood still, plates rattling, before its body broke apart from the center. Distance returned all at once. Enemy soldiers flew backward to their original positions. The cliff snapped apart. The suspended arrows fell in a harmless rain behind us. Nora looked through the hole in the mountain. A pebble. The larger rock seemed wasteful. The surviving army opened a path. We reached the Meridian platform as Victor's new body stepped out of the gate. He was taller than the Academy bell tower, formed from black crystal with veins of white fire. 4 arms unfolded from his shoulders. Each hand gripped a different section of the horizon, and every movement pulled distant storms closer. They stopped at the platform's center. Nora raised her rings. This is the final circle, I said. Go back. Your attention has limits, so does the audience's view. She looked ready to argue, until the warden's band projected a white wall behind her. The wall caught her gently, and carried her to the canyon entrance. I'm recording that as cowardice, she shouted. Spell my name correctly. Victor stepped onto the platform. The Meridian Gate widened behind him. Through it I saw a realm where mountains overlapped oceans, and stars burned inside the ground. Its first winds reached our world, and folded stone like cloth. The old warden kept me 1 inch from freedom, Victor said. I learned to eat the rest of creation. You should have started with the inch. His upper hands closed. Every sword on the battlefield flew toward me. Thousands of blades struck at once. They stopped against the outline of my body. Each edge held 1 inch from skin or cloth. Swords layered over my chest, crossed before my eyes, and formed a silver shell around me. Victor clenched his fists. The blades ground against the boundary until their edges glowed. I took 1 step. The entire shell moved with me. I took another. Blades shattered under their own pressure. Bright fragments remained suspended around my face like cold sparks. Victor opened his lower hands. Fire from the outer realm poured through the gate. It was white at the center, and black at the edges, hot enough to erase the platform without leaving ash. The flames reached me and curved. They climbed both sides of my body, joined above my head, and streamed into the sky as a burning crown. Victor pulled lightning from every storm along the horizon. It struck the crown, and split into countless branches, wrapping me in a cage of white fire. The army in the canyon could not look directly at the platform. Nora held 1 ring before her eyes, and continued writing with the other hand. I adjusted my collar. Victor roared, and brought all 4 fists down. The Meridian platform disappeared. Stone, swords and fire fell into the darkness below, but my shoes did not move. I stood on a layer of air that could not approach closer than 1 inch with the intent to let me fall. Beneath my feet, the abyss churned. Behind me, the gate opened wider. For the first time, Victor hesitated. I walked across empty air toward him. He tore distances from the world. The canyon folded. The academy appeared on the horizon, then the sea, then cities so far away their lights belonged beneath other stars. He crushed them into a single violent instant, and threw it at me. The attack stopped. Around my body, its stolen landscapes curved into a ring. Mountains bent without touching me. Waves divided around my shoulders. 1,000 city lights streamed past my coat, and returned to their proper horizons. Victor's 4 arms cracked. You are using my own law, he said. No. You were using everything outside it. The warden's band split open. The black iron became a circle of white light around my wrist. Memories not belonging to me flashed through it. The first warden standing before Victor, holding the prison shut with both hands, spending her life to maintain one untouchable measure. She had treated the inch as a wall. I had always treated it as a door. Victor abandoned the gate and lunged. His body shrank as he crossed the platform's missing distance, towering crystal compressed into the shape of a man. 4 arms became 2, a face formed around his white eyes. He gathered every power he had stolen into his right hand, and reached for my throat. His fingers stopped 1 inch away. He pulled. The space behind him collapsed into black lines, the meridian gate bent toward his back, his arms stretched, crystal veins splitting under the effort, but the gap did not close. Victor changed his grip. He reached for my eye, my chest, the warden's band. Each time his fingertips remained exactly 1 inch away. He used both hands. He screamed. The canyon floor rose behind him. The outer realm pressed through the gate. Every remaining shadow creature joined his body and added its strength. His fingernails broke against empty air. Blood floated in the impossible gap without crossing it. I let him try. The students who had called me weak were watching from Damon's restored viewing spell over the academy. Grant stood in the ruined courtyard, with his lightning sword planted among dead shadows. Damon held the spell together through his cracked staff. Nora watched from the canyon, with thousands of defeated archers around her. Victor's face remained 1 inch from mine, his rage drained slowly. Beneath it, I saw the expression Grant had worn in the dueling ring, the first understanding that effort and distance were no longer connected. Nothing can remain beyond my reach, Victor whispered. I raised my right hand. He flinched, though I had not attacked him once. You wanted 1 inch, I said. You can have 1 finger. I gave permission. My index finger crossed the distance. It touched the center of Victor's forehead. Every hostile force my boundary had rejected since he opened the prison returned through that point. The meteor's impact, the shadow creature's hunger, the army's arrows, the giant swords, the fire serpents, the folded canyon, the outer lightning, the weight of his 4 fists, and the pressure of a world collapsing into ours, entered him in one silent instant. No explosion came at first. Victor stood perfectly still with my fingertip against his skin. A thin white line appeared behind him. It crossed the meridian gate. The gate split from top to bottom. Dawn poured through the crack. Victor's crystal body became transparent, revealing every stolen distance as threads of black light. The threads snapped together, then the sound arrived. The broken platform rose in a ring around us. Clouds divided across the horizon. Victor flew backward through the gate, struck the outer realm, and carved a white path through overlapping mountains until he became a point no larger than dust. I closed my hand. The warden's band tightened into a circle. The 2 sides of the meridian gate slammed together. Victor's reaching hand appeared once in the narrowing gap. His fingers stretched toward me from the other world. Even across the closing gate, they stopped 1 inch short. The gate sealed. All the stolen distances returned to their places. The canyon expanded to its true length. The academy vanished from the horizon and remained where it belonged. The sea withdrew from the sky. The sun rose over ordinary mountains. For several seconds, nobody moved. I stepped onto the first piece of the platform still floating in the abyss. The stones gathered under my feet as I walked. By the time I reached the canyon, a new bridge had formed behind me from Victor's shattered throne. The shadow army knelt without being told. Nora lowered her notebook. You permitted a single finger. Anything more would have been rude. She looked past me at the sealed gate, and then wrote that down. When we returned to the academy, the students lined both sides of the ruined entrance. Some bowed. Others simply leaned away as I passed, leaving a very generous distance. Grant waited at the center with his repaired sword. He drew it. The entire courtyard inhaled. Grant turned the weapon and offered me the hilt. One day, I'm crossing that inch. I walked past him. Start with breakfast. He laughed once, surprised by the sound, and followed. Damon had already ordered a new name carved above the academy gates. Warden Evan, the 1 inch king. I told him the title was excessive. I waited until the stonemasons were out of hearing before asking them to make the letters larger. My elite room survived because it had been inside the dining hall's protected line. The bed was exactly as comfortable as promised. I lay down while celebrations filled the courtyards below. The warden's band rested against my sleeve at last. For the first time, I permitted it to touch me. Something slid under my door. It was a black envelope, marked with a white line. There was no hostile intent in it, so my power allowed it across the room. I opened the letter. Only one sentence waited inside. To the man standing 1 inch outside the world, Victor was the first to reach for you, not the last. I folded the paper and set it on the table. Tomorrow Grant would challenge me again. Nora would demand a complete explanation. Damon would pretend the academy could afford another crater. Beyond the sealed gate, something already knew my title. For tonight, I closed my eyes. Nothing hostile in any world could come closer than 1 inch without my permission. And I had become curious about what would happen when I opened the door.